Tyler, after the game, Gerard Mayo talked about how the little details made a big difference in the game, and because they didn't execute the little things, they're sitting at 1-1.
Yeah, and this is something that we've talked about dating back to the summer, that this team doesn't have really the high ceiling in terms of talent that you would want to see in a week in, week out competitor, which means the margin of error is a lot smaller. You have to execute those things and essentially play perfect in order to come out on the winning side. We saw that in week 1 against Cincinnati. You're making plays on special teams, on defense, executing on offense. Didn't necessarily see it in this loss to Seattle. You can think of a couple of different moments in that game. Specifically for me, there was miscommunication in the secondary between Christian Gonzalez and the back end and the safety unit. Thought that he had help, didn't. And all of a sudden you see DK Metcalf wide open, breaking off a 56-yard touchdown. So it's things like that this team simply can't afford at this point in time, because it's tough for them to go back on offense and try to right that wrong, because right now they don't really have that in sync quite yet. So it's things like that we see throughout this game and throughout the season, where they have to execute a little bit better if they want to be that scrappy 500 football team that I think that they can be.
Yeah, and then there was a field goal that could have extended the lead to 6. They couldn't convert on that. And then they had a chance to extend a drive in overtime. They elect not to go for it on 4th and 1. I want to get to that a little bit later on. But the thing that stood out in this game from the offensive side of it, Tyler, was the passing game, because Hunter Henry had a big game. But the non-tight end pass catchers combined for 3 catches and 19 yards. Pop Douglas didn't catch any balls. How do the Patriots fix their passing game to get it to be more explosive?
Well, you mentioned it right there in the question. Pop Douglas. They need to get him going. He is their number 1 wide receiver in my estimation. He's their most explosive wide receiver, I guess I should say. It's not like he's, Tyreek Hill or Justin Jefferson, but he's somebody that could get open in short spaces and help you kind of dink and dunk your way down the field. It really is kind of boggling to see why he hasn't been involved. There's a lot, we'll have to look back at the all-22s and do all that, nitty-gritty tape stuff to see what's going on there, whether or not he's not getting open or the Patriots and Jacoby Brissett are simply not looking towards him. Now, this is a run-first offense. We know that. We've seen that over the first couple of weeks here. But if they want to be a competitive offense, to be a team that can go into overtime and kind of go toe-to-toe with a team like Seattle, who really, yes, they have a lot of wide receiver talent, but Geno Smith isn't the upper echelon quarterbacks that they will face in the coming weeks. They need to be able to get the wide receivers going. Jalen Polk was able to catch a touchdown. That's fine. But overall, the wide receiver room hasn't been able to really pop, for no pun intended, for the first couple of weeks here. The Patriots have, I think it's about 245 yards passing through 2 weeks. That's the lowest total through 2 weeks for this team since 1991. They need to be able to throw the football effectively to be able to stay in these games and ultimately win them going forward.
Yeah, and one of the problems in that game yesterday, as was the case in the first game, but it was mitigated by how well they played defensively and the fact that they were able to run the ball so effectively, is the offensive line issues, because Jacoby Brissett, he was running all over the place in yesterday's game, and specifically that left tackle position, Vidarian Lowe now dealing with an injury. What are the Patriots' options at that spot specifically now?
Yeah, it's a concern, and it's been a concern dating back to the summer, back to the spring. As long as we've been talking about the Patriots, it's been about the offensive line and whether or not they can be able to hold up and protect Jacoby Brissett. And that's part of the problem in the passing game as well. I think that they're, a little bit skittish to try to let Jacoby Brissett sit back there in the pocket and try to find those wide receivers like Pop Douglas, like Jalen Polk, because of that offense line. I mean, you saw it in that game yesterday. Took a lot of abuse, you could see him a few times wincing as he's on the ground trying to get up. He's really taking a lot of licks in that backfield. And so there's some questions. And now with Vidarian Lowe possibly, unavailable due to injury, we have Chuks Okorafor, who's left the team. He was on the exempt/left the team list before this game this weekend. You're looking at possibly Caden Wallace at left tackle. He's probably the in-house option here. And again, you have to remember, it's a short week. They're playing on Thursday. It's not like you can go into free agency, try to find somebody that could kind of take things together for Sunday, you're in a one-day window here to try to figure that out before you have to really start game planning for Thursday against the New York Jets. So it's probably going to be Caden Wallace at the left side. But beyond that, they are really thin. You're talking about practice squad players that could possibly be an option for them that's currently in the building in Foxborough right now. So as much as we talk about the passing game, it still goes back to that offensive line, specifically left tackle. Probably Caden Wallace, as I said, but still, they need to figure that out more long term.
Yeah, and they have to figure it out very quickly. Again, they're playing in 3 days here against the New York Jets. I have a two-part question for you about overtime and in yesterday's game and some of the things that happened to the Patriots specifically there. The first question being, should the Patriots have gone for it on 4th and 1 on their own 39-yard line? And then on the defensive side of things, did Jonathan Jones have a right to be upset about the defensive pass interference call in overtime that helped set up the Seahawks game-winning field goal?
Well, we'll start with the penalty. He's clearly upset about it. He posted about it on his social media that he did not like the call. I don't like when officials, kind of inject themselves into those types of situations late in an overtime situation. Now, saying that, do you want them to not call penalties either? So there's kind of a give and take there to kind of, to try to figure out, okay, you do have to call the game at a certain level, but also let them play out. Now, do I think that was a penalty? It was a little tight. I don't know if you called that one in that scenario. I think that you could probably let them play out a little bit more. There was a little bit of contact, but overall, I don't think that it warrants a DPI call in overtime in a 3-point game. I just don't know if that's the right place for the officials to inject themselves. Now, going to what the Patriots were trying to face with earlier on in whether or not they should have gone for it on that 4th down attempt. There's two sides to that coin, right? For me, I think that I would have gone for it. Obviously, you're punting it away and you're hoping that your defense can make a play. And if you're Gerard Mayo, you know that the defense is probably the strength of your team. It is the strength of their team. It's their best unit. So to kind of not put the ball in their hands, but to put them on the field to possibly force a turnover, to possibly get better field position. And then all of a sudden you're only in a field goal to win situation. I understand that logic, but also the Seahawks offense was really moving on that defense, particularly in the second half, I thought. So for me, you do have Ramondre Stevenson. You had shown earlier in that game that you can kind of go into a direct snap wildcat formation to relative success. I kind of wonder if they should have done that. You're a team that is on the precipice of 2-0 and unlikely 2-0. No one thought that you were going to go in Cincinnati and win that game. No one, you weren't favored in this game against Seattle. I would have gone for it there. If you're Gerard Mayo, I think you realize what this team is and the opportunity to go to 2-0 potentially. I think I would have gone there and taken the risk of them not converting and then just letting them boot the field goal to win the game anyways.
Well, instead of 2-0, they're 1-1, and now coming up on Thursday, they play another 1-1 AFC East team. Tyler, what do you make of this Jets team that the Pats are going to be facing? Is it same old Jets, or do they look different in your mind with Aaron Rodgers at the helm at quarterback?
Well, they certainly look different because anybody other than Zach Wilson and the quarterback play that they've had over the last few years is going to be an improvement. Now, in saying that, they have run a little hot and cold. It's not like Aaron Rodgers from the Green Bay Packers is being plopped into this offense. We've seen some of that. We've seen some flashes of what it could be at its peak. But there are some moments there, too, where you go, okay, that is a 40-year-old quarterback coming off an Achilles injury. So there's kind of a give and take there. Now, it'll be interesting to see how this game goes because, as we've kind of talked about here, the Patriots can win football games, but I think they can only win it in a handful of ways, in a finite amount of ways. If this turns into a ground and pound defensive, kind of a rock fight effort, I think that they can go down to East Rutherford and win that game. I think that that's an opportunity for them to really kind of establish themselves as a 2-1 football team going forward, that they're going to be a tough out each and every week. Now, on the other side, if all of a sudden this turns into a track meet and Aaron Rodgers and Garrett Wilson and Breece Hall are starting to connect on some big touchdowns, then we're going to have some questions. It's going to be on Jacoby Brissett to find Pop Douglas, to find Ramondre Stevenson out of the backfield in the passing game, Jalen Polk, Hunter Henry once again. And that's when things start to get a little hairy as opposed to in terms of whether or not they're going to win a football game. So it kind of depends on how this game develops. One thing that is good for the New England Patriots, though, and something that should be pointed out, that Jermaine Johnson, one of their star pass rushers for the New York Jets, did leave that game. Looks like he might have suffered a significant injury. Now, you obviously don't want to see that for any player, but in terms of this football game, in terms of where this offensive line stands with the New England Patriots, they're catching a break and possibly not facing him this week.
It's been a long time since the Jets won a home game, though, against the Patriots. You have to go to the end of that 2015 season and when Ryan Fitzpatrick, he threw that overtime touchdown pass to help win that game against the Patriots. That was a famous Matthew Slater overtime, saying that we're going to kick instead of receive moment. And that's how long it's been since the Jets have actually beaten the Patriots in a home game in New Jersey. Tyler Sullivan, appreciate the time as always, and look forward to having you on later in the week. All right, and Patriots First Down will be on a different day this week. Mike Reese tomorrow night at 9:30 on TV 38 as we break down Sunday's loss. And we'll have a new episode of Patriots All Access, 7 p.m. on Wednesday on WBZ. We go behind the scenes and a whole lot more leading up to Thursday's game against the Jets. And finally on Thursday, Patriots Game Day is at 7 p.m. on TV 38 and streaming right here on CBS News Boston. The game itself kicks off at 8:15, and then after the game, Patriots fifth quarter will be on TV 38.